semi-final draw, Western Sydney Wanderers versus Sydney FC, a Sydney derby. This game will be held at Penrith Stadium. That's next Saturday. And Bentley Greens face Adelaide United, of course. That's at Kingston Heath Friday week. So a couple of nice fixtures to look forward to there. It's interesting the way it's been done, Tony. I think I'm right in saying that in previous cups we've seen a bit more time left between the quarterfinals and the semi-finals. It's good in ways and it's also bad in ways, I find. Certainly it's good because a team like Bentley, for example, can sort of maintain their match fitness. If they had have left it for 2 or potentially 3 weeks, then they really lose that touch, don't they? And it gets a lot easier for Adelaide, who are, of course, just on the doorstep of the A-League season. So, I mean, do you think this is going to help NPL teams potentially progress into a final? Because it's something that we all want to see. So do you think that a step like this, and I guess it helps that the international break falls the week after this, but do you think that this is the right way of sort of addressing that I guess gap that we all want to see filled?
Look, it certainly won't hurt, but every week as we move closer to the A-League season, the A-League clubs are getting more and more match fit. So bringing that game up through earlier makes it a lot more of a challenge for Adelaide, given that they have to travel on a Friday night at Kingston Heath. There'll be a large contingent of Bentley Green supporters, probably a number of the Greek clubs in that area, Oakley, South Melbourne, Heidelberg. They'll possibly get down to that game as well. But the hard part will actually be the next game. So if Bentley Greens do manage to get a win, and a win would be an upset at this stage, but if they do manage to get that victory, it's how do they essentially keep match fit leading up to the final? And the biggest difficulty the NPL clubs have now is the length of their season. It's actually longer than an A-League season, and they're semi-professional. So you really have to commend the work that Johnny Anastasiadis and to some degree George Katsakis as well at Heidelberg United. The amount of competitions that they're involved in, the league, the Doherty Cup, the FFA Cup, the NPL finals in Heidelberg's case as well. It's very difficult for these clubs to actually be competitive in all those competitions. And when you are at the final stages of all those competitions at this time of the year, they're playing upwards of 7 or 8 games in a month, which is fully professional. So it's very difficult to see whether they can get over the line with Adelaide United. Adelaide seem to be tailoring their cup run quite well. But if any team can do it, it'd be a team that's managed by Johnny Anastasiadis and Bentley Greens, who, this is his, I think, 8th season at the helm. And, his record is impeccable at the moment. I think they haven't finished lower than 4th under his reign. 2 premierships, a championship as well, a number of cup victories. So if any team can do it, it'll be Bentley Greens.
And I guess this is a question, before we do move on from the FFA Cup, a question that for me arises every single year with the Cup. Although this does help that, the games are closer together, are we at a point now where we almost need to explore something like staggering the games, for example? So maybe resuming at the semi-final stage in potentially late February or early March to, I guess, give the NPL teams a bit of a leg up. It's already argued that, they do have that, in late August or in early August when the A-League teams are basically, fresh back from the Maldives or Ibiza or wherever they're gone for their off season, probably still getting the mojitos out from the Skinfolds test. But do you think we're at a point where we almost need to explore that? Because even now, as good as Bentley Greens are, I still can't see them actually going on and winning the tournament because, I mean, the gap is just so massive between the semi-professional level and the professional level. Obviously, we still need to see what they can do, whether they can beat Adelaide United. There's no guarantees. But if they do get there, I mean, it's hard to see how they can continually maintain that match fitness.
Well, the difficulty with that is, a case in point with Bentley Greens, if you had this competition last year, their squad was completely turned over from last NPL season to this NPL season. I think upwards of 9 of their senior players were no longer at the club. So in a cup competition where essentially you have to play the same squad and your players are cup tied, resuming in February, Bentley wouldn't be able to fill the team if you're maintaining the integrity of the competition. If it's a different phase of the competition, much like the Champions League works from phase to phase when they move from group stage to knockout, different story. But you're then kind of looking at, well, you're almost fielding 2 different teams in order to win a competition, and that really isn't what the integrity of cup football is about. The solution going forward will ultimately be having a stronger second tier and having that second tier competing or playing its league competition at the same time as the A-League. I'm a big advocate for the A-League actually being moved back to winter. I know it's almost goes against the grain with a lot of football people, but I think it moves us in line with Asia, and it also moves us in line with grassroots football, which is basically between the months of February through to October, we are playing competition football, and it means everyone has an even playing field. Now, in that scenario, it might mean that the NPL clubs will struggle because they're essentially in season with the A-League clubs, but that means that we have to look at strengthening those second and third tier competitions. So there's a myriad of pros and cons, I guess, with the way we structure the FFA Cup. I think at the moment we've kind of certainly FFA have been listening, I think, to the NPL level, and that's why they've brought the semi-finals through a little earlier. And the way cup competitions are structured, they're played in a calendar year as opposed to an overlapping year. So we've got to have this tournament essentially completed by December. So it's going to be the final that would be the difficulty for an NPL club. I would also look at the impact that has to a club that is essentially going to have to extend its season, which is really difficult for a semi-professional environment that we currently have.
Yeah, it's a bloody tough one. Well, we could spend an entire show really talking about this, so we'll move on now to another topic.